My husband told everyone I was crazy. I didn't argue or defend myself. I kept every receipt and every detail, and waited for the perfect moment. The way the silence echoed in the kitchen that night, heavy and full of unspoken accusations, it was louder than any shout. My husband, Mark, had just finished his performance, a masterclass in controlled outrage, punctuated by a dismissive wave of his hand. "Honestly, Sarah," he'd said, his voice dripping with faux concern, "you're just not well. You're imagining things. Everyone thinks so." He turned then, walking away from the pristine quartz countertop, leaving me standing there, a half-empty glass of iced tea sweating in my hand, the clinking of the ice cubes suddenly a deafening sound in the quiet aftermath. He told everyone I was crazy. But I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded. And in my mind, a little mental ledger, already overflowing with meticulously recorded entries, clicked open and added another one. I kept every receipt, every detail. And I waited. For the perfect moment. Let that sink in for a second. Imagine living your life, building it brick by brick, with someone you believe is your partner, your anchor, only to have them systematically dismantle your reality, piece by agonizing piece. That's where I was. But before the unraveling, there was the weaving. Before the storm, there was the calm. Our life in Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, had been, to an outsider, idyllic. A picture-perfect suburban dream. Our house, a charming turn-of-the-century Victorian with a wraparound porch, sat nestled on Elm Street, just a stone's throw from Prescott Park. The kind of place where neighbors still exchanged recipes and the ice cream truck played a tinny rendition of Pop Goes the Weasel on summer evenings. Mark, with his easy smile and charming way with words, was a local favorite. He worked as a marketing director for Green Valley Organics, a burgeoning local food co-op, a job he often described as his passion project. I was a librarian at the Willow Creek Public Library, surrounded by the comforting scent of old paper and the hushed whispers of stories waiting to be discovered. Our mornings used to start with a specific, comforting ritual of coffee. Not just any coffee, mind you. Mark insisted on grinding the beans fresh each day, a specific Costa Rican blend from the Daily Grind Cafe downtown. The aroma would fill our kitchen, mingling with the faint, sweet scent of the honeysuckle climbing the trellis outside the window. He'd bring me a cup in bed, always with 2 sugars and a splash of oat milk, exactly how I liked it. He'd sit on the edge of the mattress, running his fingers through my hair, telling me about his dreams for the day, about us. Those were the mornings that defined our normalcy, the kind of normalcy I craved and thought I had found. We'd walk our golden retriever, Gus, through Prescott Park every evening, hand in hand, talking about our day, our future, our hopes for a family. We had plans to renovate the attic into a nursery, to plant a rose garden. They felt real, tangible, within reach. And Mark, he was the architect of those dreams, the one who painted them in such vivid colors. He was my rock, my confidant, my everything. Or so I believed. This is the sunk cost fallacy at play, a psychological phenomenon where people continue to invest in something purely because of the previous investments they've made, even when it's clear that continuing is not the best course of action. I had invested years, love, dreams into Mark, and the idea of those investments being worthless was terrifying, almost unthinkable. It made me overlook so much at first. Looking back, the cracks were there, tiny hairline fractures in the facade, almost imperceptible. The first time I truly felt a flicker of unease was about 2 years ago. We were at a friend's barbecue, and I'd mentioned to our mutual friend, Chloe, about a strange text message Mark had received earlier that day, a cryptic, "Can't wait for our next adventure," from an unknown number. Mark, overhearing, had immediately swooped in, his arm around my waist, a little too tight. "Oh, that," he'd laughed, a charming, dismissive sound. "That's David from work, trying to be funny about a new marketing campaign. Sarah here," he'd winked at Chloe, "gets a little worried when I have secrets. You know how wives are." Chloe had smiled politely, but her eyes had darted to mine, a question in them. Later that night, I'd asked Mark about it again. His charming smile had evaporated. "Seriously, Sarah? Are you going to question every single text message I get?" "It's David. My colleague." "What, do you think I'm having an affair with David?" His tone was sharp, his eyes suddenly cold. "You're being paranoid. It's exhausting, honestly." I'd immediately felt a flush of shame, apologizing profusely, convinced that I was being paranoid, that I was overreacting. He'd even turned it into a moment where I felt like I had wronged him. "I just want you to trust me, honey," he'd said, pulling me close, stroking my hair. This was my first real taste of gaslighting, though I didn't have the word for it then. He'd twisted my perfectly reasonable question, my gut instinct, into a flaw in my character, making me doubt my own perception of reality. And it worked. I dropped it. I always dropped it. Then there was the incident with the car. My beloved vintage Mustang, a gift from my late grandfather, had developed a persistent rattle. I'd taken it to our trusted local mechanic, Ray, at Honest Auto Repair on Maple Avenue. Ray had called me, detailing a long list of repairs, including a costly transmission issue. When I told Mark, he'd scoffed. "Ray? Seriously, Sarah? That old coot will tell you your car needs a new engine if he thinks he can get away with it. He's trying to rip you off." He'd then insisted I take it to Tony's garage, a place I'd never heard of, across town. "Tony's a friend of a friend," Mark explained. "He'll give us the real deal." I hesitated, but Mark was insistent, almost forceful. "Do you trust my judgment or not?" he'd asked, his voice laced with thinly veiled disappointment. So, I took it to Tony's. A week later, Tony called. "Good news, Sarah. Just a loose exhaust shield." Ray was way off. "Only cost you $100. Mark had been triumphant. "See? I told you. You always doubt me. You always think the worst." I was relieved, of course, but a tiny, nagging voice whispered, "Why would Ray lie? He's known us for years." I pushed it away. Mark was just looking out for me, saving us money. Right? The truth, as I would later discover, was far more insidious, painting a picture not just of financial manipulation, but of calculated deceit. It wasn't about saving money, it was about control, about making me dependent on his superior judgment. Another red flag fluttered into existence when my mother fell ill. She lives 2 states away, and I wanted to fly out to see her. Mark was initially supportive, but as the day approached, he became distant, irritable. "Are you sure you need to go, Sarah? Right now? We have that dinner party with the Millers on Saturday. You know how important those connections are for my work." I argued, something I rarely did. "Mark, she's my mother. She's having surgery." He sighed dramatically. Fine. Go. But don't expect me to entertain the Millers alone. You know how awkward I am without you there to smooth things over." The guilt was immediate, heavy, suffocating. I ended up cutting my visit short, flying back early, consumed by the irrational fear that I was letting him down, jeopardizing his career. He met me at the airport with flowers and a dazzling smile, making me feel cherished and grateful. "See? I knew you'd come back for me," he'd whispered, hugging me tight. He had effectively used emotional blackmail, disguised as concern for his own well-being and our shared future, to control my actions and isolate me from my support system. This cycle of making me feel bad, then reeling me back in with affection, became a recurring theme. It creates what psychologists call traumatic bonding, where the victim develops an unhealthy attachment to the abuser due to a cycle of abuse and intermittent reinforcement, moments of kindness and connection. I was so caught up in the emotional roller coaster that I couldn't see the tracks he was laying. The slow, insidious drip of doubt continued. My friends, Chloe especially, started noticing. "Mark seems a little intense lately, doesn't he?" She'd ventured one afternoon over lattes at Oakwood Books and Brews, the cozy little cafe nestled amongst shelves of used paperbacks. I'd deflected, of course, defending Mark, explaining away his increasingly erratic behavior as stress from work. But even as I spoke, the words tasted like ashes in my mouth. One evening, Mark accused me of flirting with David, the new mailman, because I'd spent a minute too long signing for a package. His voice was cold, his eyes narrowed. "I saw the way he looked at you. And the way you lingered. Don't think I didn't." I was dumbfounded. David was easily 70, with a perpetually stoic expression. "Mark, he's just being polite." I protested. He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Polite? Or maybe you're just naive. Or maybe you like the attention." He then gave me the silent treatment for 2 days, only forgiving me after I broke down crying and promised to be more mindful of how I acted around other men. He was systematically chipping away at my self-worth, isolating me, and planting seeds of self-doubt. The way the old house groaned that night, a specific, familiar creak from the 3rd step on the main staircase, usually a comforting sound, instead felt like the house itself was sighing in despair. The faint smell of his Old Spice aftershave, which once represented comfort, now carried a tang of something cloying and suffocating. Then came the night everything shattered. It wasn't a dramatic argument, no flung plates or raised voices. It was far more insidious. We were at our annual neighborhood block party, a vibrant affair with string lights and barbecue smoke curling into the twilight sky. Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, a sweet woman who often mistook me for my cousin, was regaling a small group with a story about a stray cat she'd rescued. I made a casual comment about how much Gus, our dog, would love a feline companion. Mark, who was standing beside me, laughed. A sharp, disbelieving laugh. He put his arm around my shoulder, squeezing tightly. "Oh, Sarah, you're always dreaming up these fantasies. Remember that time she swore she saw a family of deer dancing in the backyard?" He turned to the group, a theatrical shrug. "She has such a vivid imagination, bless her heart. Sometimes I worry she loses touch with reality." The group chuckled politely. Mrs. Henderson looked at me with pity. My stomach plummeted. The world seemed to tilt. The string lights blurred into hazy streaks of color. I could feel the blood draining from my face. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't even breathe in that moment. It wasn't the deer comment. That had been a harmless exaggeration I'd made once, years ago. It was the way he said it, the public dismissal, the casual cruelty, the implication that I was delusional. He had just called me crazy, not to my face, but to an audience. He told everyone I was crazy, and for the first time, I didn't just feel shame. I felt a cold, hard resolve solidify within me. The clinking of ice in my glass, forgotten moments earlier, seemed to ring like a warning bell. The charade was over. The game had changed. And he didn't even know he'd just started it. This was the catalyst. It wasn't just a red flag, it was a firework, detonating the last vestiges of my denial. The moment he said those words, something clicked. The emotional fog began to lift, replaced by a chilling clarity. It was like watching a slow-motion replay of my life, seeing all the little threads he'd been pulling, all the subtle manipulations. The comment about Ray the mechanic, the guilt trips about my mother, the absurd jealousy over the mailman, the constant undermining of my perceptions. It all coalesced into a single, terrifying truth. Mark wasn't just flawed. He was deliberately trying to dismantle me. He was employing tactics often associated with individuals possessing dark triad personality traits, narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Not necessarily a diagnosis, but his behavior displayed strong tendencies towards these traits. A grandiose sense of self-importance, a disregard for others' feelings, a manipulative and deceptive interpersonal style, and a lack of empathy. My own denial, fueled by years of emotional investment, had kept me blind. But no longer. My husband told everyone I was crazy. And now I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't defend myself. I would collect. My investigation started small, almost instinctively. The first step was my phone. I began keeping it with me constantly, silent but recording whenever Mark was around, especially during arguments or when he made suspicious calls. I didn't know what I was looking for exactly, but I knew I needed objective proof, something beyond my increasingly unreliable memory. The next morning, feigning a migraine, I called in sick to the library. While Mark was at work, humming a Johnny tune as he left, I began my systematic search. I started with our joint bank account. The online statements were a treasure trove of abnormalities. Several large withdrawals to cash that I didn't recognize. A recurring payment to an unnamed consulting firm that wasn't Green Valley Organics. And then, the clincher, a significant payment to Tony's Garage. Not $100 like he claimed, but $300, dated a week after my car had supposedly been fixed. A quick call to Ray, the honest mechanic, confirmed my deepest fear. "Sarah, I told you the transmission was going. We talked about it. I put it all in writing. Are you okay?" He'd sent me the original quote, detailed and professional. It was undeniable. Mark had not only lied about the repair cost, he'd also let me drive around in a car with a faulty transmission, risking my life, just to prove I was wrong and he was right. The anger that surged through me was a physical wave, cold and swift. This wasn't just about my sanity anymore. It was about his deceit, his danger. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, specific dialogues, screenshots of bank statements, printouts of emails. I found a hidden folder in his email account labeled Projects, which contained surprisingly flirtatious exchanges with someone named Veronica, who was not David. I bought a small, discreet voice recorder, the kind meant for lectures, and kept it in my purse. I installed a small, motion-activated camera in the living room, disguised as a charging station, after noticing that certain items in my office, my journal, specific documents, seemed to have been moved, subtly. Just enough to make me question if I was imagining things. I needed proof that he was snooping, invading my privacy. The camera footage a few days later showed Mark, late at night, rifling through my desk drawers. My suspicion, once a whisper, was now a roaring fire. I knew I couldn't confront him yet. The moment wasn't perfect. I needed irrefutable evidence, something that would stick, not just in my mind, but in a courtroom. I started observing Mark's daily routine more closely. He had a habit of leaving his phone on the charger in the kitchen while he showered in the mornings. One Tuesday, I took a calculated risk. I'd set my alarm earlier, waited until I heard the shower running, and then, with trembling hands, I picked up his phone. It was unlocked. My heart pounded against my ribs. I knew this was a violation of trust, but what trust was left? I quickly scrolled through his messages. There she was, Veronica. Her contact name had been changed to David, Green Valley Organics, in his phone. The messages were sickeningly sweet, filled with pet names and plans for our next adventure. One specific message jumped out, almost cleared out that joint account, babe. Sarah's none the wiser. Soon we'll be free. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just having an affair, he was systematically draining our finances. The deeper I dug, the more layers of betrayal I uncovered. He had taken out a second mortgage on our house, forging my signature. I found the documents tucked away in a locked briefcase I didn't even know he owned, hidden in the back of his closet. The consulting firm payments? They were going to a shell company he'd set up, funneling money from Green Valley Organics. He was embezzling funds from his passion project, using the co-op as his personal piggy bank. My initial rage turned into a profound sense of emptiness, a hollow ache where love and trust once resided. The Mark I thought I knew, the charming, loving husband, was a carefully constructed fiction. The real Mark was a manipulative, self-serving predator. This profound disconnect between the person I believed him to be and the person he actually was led to intense cognitive dissonance. My mind struggled to reconcile these two opposing realities, creating immense psychological discomfort. I felt like I was living in a nightmare, watching my entire life story twist into a grotesque horror show. I finally reached out to Chloe. I met her at a neutral coffee shop, the Daily Grind, the same place Mark got his beans. The irony was not lost on me. I laid it all out, the gaslighting, the financial fraud, the affair, the constant belittling. I showed her the bank statements, the recordings, the pictures. Chloe, my loyal friend, listened with an expression of growing horror. Sarah, she finally whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I knew something was off. I'm so sorry I didn't push harder. She believed me. That, in itself, was a small victory, a crack in the wall of isolation Mark had built around me. Chloe introduced me to her cousin, Eleanor Vance, a formidable family law attorney in the city. Eleanor was calm, professional, and listened to every detail with a steely gaze. When I finished, she simply said, Sarah, you've built an incredibly strong case. He won't know what hit him. She confirmed that the forgeries, the embezzlement, and the financial drain on our joint assets constituted grounds for both the divorce and criminal charges. This wasn't just a marital dispute anymore, it was a matter of justice. The perfect moment finally presented itself. Mark had called for a family meeting at our house. He'd invited both his parents and mine, ostensibly to discuss my recent erratic behavior and how we can support Sarah through her struggles. My heart pounded. He planned to publicly declare me unstable, to gaslight me in front of our families, securing his narrative. He wanted to make it impossible for anyone to believe me when I eventually exposed him. But he had no idea what I had gathered. I coordinated with Eleanor. She advised me on how to handle the meeting. I made sure the motion-activated camera was fully charged and positioned perfectly in the living room. The air in the room was thick with tension as everyone gathered. My parents looked worried, his parents looked concerned, Mark looked smug, a slight, condescending smile playing on his lips. Gus, usually boisterous, lay quietly by my feet, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Mark began, his voice smooth and measured, a performance worthy of an Oscar. Mom, Dad, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, he started, addressing my parents by their surname, a subtle jab at our lack of intimacy. We're here today because Sarah hasn't been herself lately. She's been withdrawn. Paranoid, making accusations that frankly are quite disturbing. He then launched into a carefully crafted narrative of my supposed decline, referencing the dancing deer incident, the paranoia about his phone, the irrational fear of Ray the mechanic. He even brought up my mother's illness, twisting my concern into an unhealthy obsession. My parents shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with confusion and concern. His mother, Eleanor, reached out to pat my hand, a look of pity on her face. My stomach churned. This was it. The moment. The stage was set. When he finally paused, a triumphant glint in his eye, I took a deep, steadying breath. Mark, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, you're right. I haven't been myself. But it's not because I'm unwell. It's because I've been uncovering the truth about you. His smile faltered. My parents looked at me bewildered. His parents looked annoyed. What on earth are you talking about, Sarah? Mark scoffed, his charm instantly returning, a dismissive chuckle escaping his lips. See? This is what I mean. Delusions. I didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, I calmly reached into my bag. I've kept every receipt, Mark. Every detail. I pulled out a thick binder, overflowing with documents. Starting with this. The original repair estimate from Ray at Honest Auto Repair for my Mustang. Dated 2 years ago. I slid it across the coffee table to my father. And this, I continued, pulling out another document, is the payment record from our joint account to Tony's garage for $300. Not the 100 you claimed. And not for a loose exhaust shield, but for nothing. Because you wanted to undermine my trust in my mechanic. And me. Mark's face was beginning to pale. His parents looked at him, their expressions hardening. Sarah, you're being ridiculous, he tried, his voice losing its confident edge. This is a gross misinterpretation. Is it? I asked, my gaze unwavering. And what about this? I pulled out printouts of his texts with Veronica, with the changed contact name highlighted. Veronica, who isn't David from work. Veronica, who you've been planning our next adventure with. Veronica, who you told you were almost cleared out that joint account with. My mother gasped. My father's jaw clenched. Mark spluttered, those are doctored. They're not real. They are, Mark, I said, a chilling certainty in my voice. Just like these are real. I then produced the bank statements showing the large, suspicious cash withdrawals, the shell company payments, and finally, the damning evidence of the forged second mortgage application. I laid it all out, piece by agonizing piece, a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to his carefully constructed web of lies. You didn't just call me crazy, Mark. You tried to financially ruin us, you embezzled from your company, and you risked my life by letting me drive a car with a faulty transmission, all while planning to run off with your mistress. The room was silent, save for the frantic panting of Gus beside me. Mark sat there, utterly exposed, his smug facade shattered into 1,000 pieces. His face was a mask of shock, then rage, then something akin to fear. My father, a quiet man, stood up, his voice shaking. Mark, he said, what have you done? Mark's parents were aghast, their son's carefully cultivated image crumbling before their eyes. In that moment, I realized the ultimate resolution wasn't about winning an argument, it was about reclaiming my truth, my sanity, my life. The fallout was swift and brutal for Mark. Eleanor, my attorney, had everything ready. The evidence was irrefutable. The recordings, the documents, the time-stamped photos of his phone activity, it all painted a picture of a man who was not just a cheating husband, but a serial manipulator and a financial criminal. He was immediately fired from Green Valley Organics after the board reviewed my evidence. The police were involved due to the embezzlement and forgery. The divorce was finalized quickly, with Mark losing almost everything due to his misconduct. He tried to fight, of course, to paint me as the crazy, vindictive ex-wife, but the mountain of evidence I had meticulously collected drowned out his every protest. The public shaming in Willow Creek was severe. He became a pariah, his charming facade replaced by the grim reality of his actions. He was charged with several counts of fraud and embezzlement. As for me, the recovery was long and arduous. The emotional scars ran deep. Rebuilding trust, both in others and in my own judgment, was a slow process. But I had my family, my friends, and most importantly, my self-respect. Chloe was a constant source of support, and I even reconnected with Ray, who was genuinely concerned. The house on Elm Street felt different now, cleansed of the insidious lies that had permeated its walls. The squeaky third step on the staircase no longer sounded like a sigh of despair, but just a squeaky step. I sold the Mustang, opting for a new, reliable car, a small symbolic act of shedding the past. I poured myself back into my work at the library, finding solace in the quiet comfort of stories, now with a deeper understanding of the complexities of human nature, both good and bad. The smell of fresh coffee still filled my kitchen every morning, but now I was the one grinding the beans, savoring the aroma, a quiet act of defiance and self-possession. I was no longer the woman who doubted herself, who let her reality be dictated by another. My husband had told everyone I was crazy, but I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I kept every receipt and every detail. And when the perfect moment arrived, I didn't just expose him, I set myself free. And that, I've realized, was the only argument that ever truly mattered.